use cross multiplication to solve proportions like this one. A proportion is two equal fractions, and when one piece is missing, we say we're going to solve the proportion by finding the value of that missing piece. In this proportion, you can see that if you just multiplied the 3 by 2, you would get 6. So you can do the same to the denominator and find out that x must be equal to 10. This is probably a method that you've used previously. Unfortunately, that method will only work for integer solutions, and there are many more solutions that are rational numbers and irrational numbers, and you won't find them doing this method. So we need a new method. The new method is based on a property of proportions. So let's look at that. If I take a really obvious example, like 1/2 is equal to 4/8 or 5/10 or 3/6, you can choose any equal proportion that you want to. It turns out that there's a special property that has to do with common denominators. If you multiply these two denominators together to make a common denominator of 16, the way you get the numerators is by multiplying the left side by 8 and multiplying the right side by 2. And then you would get 8 for both numerators, right? Well, let's look at a clean example of this because I want to show you why that's helpful. What we just did to get the numerators of those two fractions is we multiplied each denominator by the opposite numerator. 2 times 4 is 8, and 8 times 1 is also 8. When two fractions are equal, these cross products are always equal. You saw this in a previous video where I showed you how to compare fractions when these don't turn out to be equal. Today we're going to use the property with proportions because whenever two fractions are equal, their cross products are equal. Now, why is that helpful? Well, if you look at my second proportion up here, it's a little tougher to say what times 3 is 51. You might know the answer, but let's use the cross products. Since these two fractions are equal, their cross products have to be equal. So what we're going to do is we're going to find the two cross products and set them equal. 3 times x is 3x. That is equal to 5 times 51. Now remember my mental math trick for multiplying by 5. What's half of 51? It's 25.5, so this is 255. That's 5 times 51. Now solve for x. I'm going to divide both sides by 3, and I get x equals, does 3 go into that? Let's see, 5 plus 5 is 10, plus 2 more is 12. 12 is a multiple of 3, so 3 definitely goes into 255. 3 goes into 25 8 times with 1 left over, which makes 15 here. 3 goes into 15 5 times. So my answer is x equals 85. Let's try some more examples so we can really master this. Notice in this problem, you can't multiply 5 by an integer and turn it into 6, and that's why we need the cross product method. So let's just multiply these two diagonals. X times 6 is 6x. 5 times 17 is like half of 17 times 10, and that is 85. Now to get x by itself, you divide by 6. At this point in our math development, we don't care if 6 goes in evenly. Fractions are totally fine for an answer. So if you get 85/6 for an answer, all you do is check to see if it's reduced. If it's reduced, you're done. How do we know if 6 can go into 85 or if we can reduce? Well, 8 plus 5 is 13. Since 13 is not a multiple of 3, then 3 is not a factor of 85. And 85 is odd, so 2 is not a factor of 85. And 3 and 2 are the only factors of 6. So you can't reduce this. That is your final answer, and I want you to leave it just like that. Do not change it to a decimal and round off. This is the exact answer. So stop here. Here's another example. This time we've gotten 2x. No problem. It works the same way. Find the cross products. 5 times 2x is 10x. 14 times 15. Well, let's just work that out. 10x equals 210. So we divide by 10 and find that x is equal to 21. That's our final answer. Let's try another. Ooh, this looks really complicated. No problem. Just treat this like one object, okay? So when we multiply, let's write it out first. So we're doing 2 times x plus 1, and that equals 8 times 5, which is 40. Let's distribute the 2. So I get 2x plus 2 times 1 is 2 equals 40. And now we solve for x. Remember to get rid of any addition or subtraction before dividing. Now divide by 2. So x is 19. And we are done. And that is how you use cross multiplication to solve proportions. You should be using this method from now on because it's going to work for every kind of problem we run into. Good luck.